They told us sugar was just a treat, a comfort, a pleasure, harmless, as long as it was in moderation. But what if that was the biggest lie of the last 100 years? What if removing chocolate, candy, all those innocent sweets, could unlock something very deep inside the human brain? In 2023, a team of neuroscientists noticed something strange. People who stopped eating refined sugar began experiencing vivid dreams, flashes of forgotten memories, and even unexplained changes in behavior. At first, they called it coincidence. Then the data came. Consistent patterns, identical experiences, and then one subject vanished. This isn't just about health. It's about control, addiction, and a truth someone doesn't want you to find. What happens when an entire society gives up sugar? You're about to find out. Hit like, subscribe, and let's go. For decades, sugar has been a quiet companion in nearly every moment of modern life, from the first coffee in the morning to the last bite before sleep. Chocolate after a long day. A candy tucked into a child's hand. Sweetness has become comfort. But behind that comfort lies a web of chemical manipulation, cultural conditioning, and something far more unsettling, mass dependency. In today's world, refined sugar is found in over 70% of processed foods. It's embedded in cereals, sauces, breads, even in items labeled healthy. The science? Well, that's where things get complicated. Officially, sugar is not addictive. Officially, it's safe. But researchers have long noticed something that didn't quite add up. MRI scans revealed that sugar stimulates the same reward centers in the brain as cocaine, flooding the system with dopamine, then crashing it, leaving behind a silent craving that builds, unnoticed. Yet society treats it like a harmless indulgence. Doctors warn about obesity, diabetes, sure, but almost no one asks why quitting sugar feels like withdrawal. Why the headaches, the shaking, the mood swings, or the dreams, especially the dreams. It was only when thousands of individuals, entirely separate, across different countries, began reporting the same strange psychological symptoms after cutting sugar, that the scientific community began to worry. What exactly happens to the human brain when sweetness disappears? And more importantly, why had no one ever asked that before? It began quietly. In late 2023, a small clinical trial in Helsinki set out to observe the psychological effects of sugar withdrawal in adults over 60. It was supposed to be routine, simple dietary changes, weekly check-ins. But within just 9 days, the data turned strange. Participants didn't just experience physical symptoms, they reported vivid hallucinations, sudden waves of anxiety, even temporary memory loss. One woman claimed she began remembering things that had never happened, or shouldn't have. At first, the scientists blamed age, stress, suggestion. But the same symptoms appeared in younger test groups. Then in other countries, Japan, Germany, Canada, completely unrelated studies, identical results. And that's when a researcher named Dr. Eileen Korhonen noticed something chilling. Across dozens of case files, subjects described hearing the same sounds in their sleep, rhythmic tapping, distant whispers, and in several cases, a voice. One phrase repeated, "Now you see," as if something had been blocking perception, and sugar had kept it buried. But the strangest part? Brain scans showed subtle increases in electrical activity in areas previously thought dormant. Silent zones suddenly lit up. Something was waking up or being uncovered. And just as this data started gaining traction, 2 key researchers vanished. Their files were wiped. Their statements retracted. All funding was pulled. And so the question remains, what was so dangerous about people simply choosing not to eat sugar? By mid-2024, something unexpected began to happen, not in laboratories, but in everyday homes. Millions of people, inspired by viral challenges or health trends, decided to give up sugar. For many, it started as a simple 30-day detox. But by the second week, the stories started pouring in. Online forums exploded with identical accounts, heightened senses, lucid dreams, the sensation of being watched at night. Some reported sudden memories from early childhood, long believed lost. Others described an overwhelming sense of clarity, followed by crushing dread. The numbers were impossible to ignore. Within 3 months, global sugar sales dropped by 18%. In the US alone, over 40 million people claimed to have reduced or eliminated refined sugar, a shift larger than any dietary movement in modern history. But that wasn't the strange part. Emergency rooms began seeing a spike in insomnia cases, night terrors, temporary psychosis. One hospital in Chicago reported 7 unrelated patients who, during sugar withdrawal, drew the same symbol over and over again, a spiral with 3 intersecting lines. When asked what it meant, they all said the same thing: "I don't know. It just appeared." MRI scans continued to show activation in dormant regions of the brain, particularly in the pineal gland, an organ long associated with mystical experience, but largely inactive in modern humans. Coincidence? Or had sugar been suppressing something far more primal, far more powerful than anyone imagined? The question was no longer if this was real, but what would happen next when even more people began to wake up. It was Dr. Miguel Hartman, a cognitive neuroscientist from Geneva, who finally said what no one dared to voice out loud. After months of studying brain patterns in post-sugar subjects, he published a controversial theory. Refined sugar wasn't just addictive, it was a neurological suppressant. His hypothesis? That sugar, particularly in the doses consumed today, acted like a low-grade tranquilizer, muting higher-level consciousness, emotional recall, and access to certain memory pathways. And when people removed it, those neural circuits reignited. More frighteningly, Hartman suggested this might not be accidental. He traced the exponential growth of sugar in the modern diet to a sharp spike post-World War II, coinciding with the rise of mass advertising, food processing, and behavioral conditioning programs. In one declassified document from 1957, found buried in a digital archive, a military psychologist wrote, "Sugar reduces the intensity of waking thought. It is ideal for mass environments. It maintains order." Let that sink in. Not just a treat, not just comfort, but a tool. Some dismissed Hartman as paranoid, but others began connecting dots: the rise in global sugar subsidies, the quiet suppression of anti-sugar research, the funding trails tied to pharmaceutical giants. Why would a substance with no nutritional value, linked to multiple diseases, still dominate the shelves? And more importantly, why did the brain become more alert, more alive, once it was gone? If consciousness itself had been dulled for decades, what exactly have we been kept from seeing? And who benefits from that blindness? In 2025, multiple research labs, from MIT to Kyoto University, began quietly launching independent studies into what they now called the sugar silence effect. Using advanced neuroimaging, researchers confirmed that after just 14 days without refined sugar, the brain's activity didn't just normalize, it surged. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoning, awareness, and decision-making, showed unexpected bursts of electrical activity, especially during sleep. But the most controversial findings came from deep brain stimulation studies. In subjects who had gone sugar-free for over a month, electrodes picked up synchronized pulses from the pineal gland, pulses that followed no known biological rhythm. Scientists called them cognitive echoes, like forgotten signals trying to break through. Even artificial intelligence models trained on brain data began flagging anomalies in these sugar-free patterns it couldn't explain. Meanwhile, a Swedish tech company developed a prototype wearable that tracked micro-shifts in brainwaves. When tested on long-term sugar abstainers, it showed identical distortions, brief, recurring spikes that appeared just before users reported feelings of sudden awareness or déjà vu. Governments took notice. Funding was slashed. Equipment was confiscated in at least 3 private labs. The official explanation? Preventing pseudoscience. But behind the scenes, quiet collaborations continued, some researchers going underground, sharing data on encrypted networks, searching for one terrifying answer. If refined sugar was keeping our perception narrowed, then what, exactly, have we been shielded from seeing? And more pressingly, what happens when enough people finally see it? As more people broke free from sugar's grip, the world split into 2 realities, those who saw and those who refused. News anchors dismissed it as mass hysteria. Religious leaders called it a spiritual crisis. Pharmaceutical giants flooded media with wellness sugar campaigns. But in hidden corners of the internet, a storm was building, alternative theories, fragments of truth and fear colliding. One theory claimed sugar was originally introduced not as food, but as a containment agent, a biochemical filter engineered to keep certain neural frequencies dormant. Others believed it was alien in origin, seeded into civilization after a contact event long erased from history. A more grounded, but equally terrifying, theory proposed sugar was never meant to be dangerous until it was altered. That since the 1950s, sugar production had been modified at the molecular level, by design. A slow experiment. An invisible cage. And then came the cost. As millions unplugged from sweetness, something stirred. Mass reports of sleepwalking. Shared dreams. Whole communities waking at the same time, whispering the same words. In Germany, a town experienced a 12-minute blackout during which over 200 people described seeing a shape in the sky. Governments called it electrical interference. But among those who had quit sugar, the visions were identical. And here lies the paradox: the clearer the mind becomes, the more fragile it grows. Some broke under the weight of truth. Some vanished. And some began to change. So the question remains, were we being protected from something darker or simply kept from remembering who or what we really are? By 2027, the divide became unbridgeable. On one side, the awakened. Those who had gone months, even years, without sugar. Their minds sharper, their emotions more volatile, their dreams, no longer dreams, but something closer to visions. On the other, the asleep. The vast majority, still bound to sweetness, still dulled, still unaware. But the shift was no longer just mental. Doctors began to record subtle biological changes, altered sleep cycles, sensitivity to light, resistance to certain medications in those who had quit sugar entirely. A new subclass of humanity was forming, not designed, but triggered. Scientists coined the term cerebrants, evolved, hyper-aware individuals with enhanced neuroplasticity and pattern recognition. At first, they were studied, then feared. Soon, governments labeled them unstable, dangerous. Entire districts were quarantined. News reports quietly disappeared. The cerebrants didn't fight back, at least not in the way people expected. They simply disconnected, moved underground, vanished. And still, their numbers grew. Meanwhile, ecosystems began reacting strangely. Bee populations surged in cerebrant-dense areas. Electrical interference became common. Magnetic fields fluctuated. It was as if the planet itself was responding. Some scientists speculated that humanity had, for decades, been living beneath its own potential, and that sugar was the cap, the cage, the inhibitor. Now that it was lifted, something ancient and global had been triggered. Not a revolution, an evolution. But every evolution demands a price. What happens when a new form of humanity no longer recognizes the old? And worse, what if they no longer need it? So now we stand at the edge of something irreversible. The world is no longer united by species or nation or language, but by perception. Two realities exist, side by side. One that clings to comfort, to the illusion of sweetness and safety, and another that has stepped beyond the veil. But evolution, as history has shown us, does not wait for consent. The cerebrants, those who awakened, are no longer asking questions. They are building something we don't understand. Quietly, separately. Some say they're reconnecting with frequencies the human mind once knew. Others believe they are preparing to leave, or to reshape what remains. And so, a choice presents itself, not from a government, or a screen, or a lab, but from within. Do we continue numbing ourselves with pleasure, with convenience, with chemicals disguised as joy? Or do we face the discomfort of clarity, the terror of waking up, even if it means losing everything we've been told is normal? Because maybe sugar was never the enemy. Maybe it was only the curtain and now it's been pulled back. What's left is up to us. But know this, awareness comes at a cost. And once you begin to see, you can never unsee. Remember how this all started? A simple question: what happens when you stop eating sugar? It sounded harmless, maybe even boring. But now, after everything you've heard, does it still feel like just a diet change? Or something far deeper, something waiting to be uncovered inside you? I'll be honest with you, when I first read the reports, I thought it was nonsense. A conspiracy. A glitch in the data. But then I tried it. Just 2 weeks, no chocolate, no candy, no refined sweets. I didn't dream the same way anymore. I started waking up at the exact same time every night, 3:17 a.m. And once, I heard someone whisper my name. There was no one there. Maybe it was nothing. Or maybe it was the first crack in the glass. What if this isn't just about food or health? What if we've been choosing blindness day after day, with every bite not knowing what we're keeping out or keeping in? And now it's your turn. Would you dare to stop completely? No exceptions, no cheat days. Just you and your unfiltered mind. Could you handle what might surface? Or would you prefer the comfort of the sweet silence? Tell me, have you ever tried quitting sugar? And if not, what exactly are you afraid you might see? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. Because maybe, just maybe, you and I aren't the only ones who've started to see.